How you doing, everybody? My name is Alexander. My subject is reality. I argue that reality is a subjective, empirical illusion because we cannot be objective about the physical world. We can only experience appearances that the physical world is projecting this way. Before I start, I just want to see how many people here think that reality goes from the physical world to the mind. Nobody? Okay, so we're good. Okay. All right, so a little bit of background. Philosophers question reality ever since its roots, but as the more that they became sophisticated, they were interested in the relationship between the mind and the physical world and which way it goes. So we have the birth of empiricism, which is a branch of philosophy that argues that all knowledge is derived from sense experience. So the question, my question is our sense experience an accurate interpretation of the real world, or do we experience subjective illusions while assuming that our perception is coherent with the real world? And the hypothesis is we cannot prove that there's a real world, but even if we could, it would by definition be different than it appears to us. So we have René Descartes, who was a French philosopher. He said that only information that we can be certain of is that we exist. If you can think about existence, that automatically means that you exist. So that's the famous quote, "I think, therefore I am." So he was one of the first ones who said that we interact with the real world through our five senses, but that our senses are deceiving, and they can be contradictory. So he uses a wooden stick in water. So here I have a pencil that's in water. He says if you put a wooden stick in water, it looks bent. But if you touch it with your hand, it's straight. So our senses can be deceiving and contradictory, so we don't know when to trust them and when not to trust them. He also had a concept, the real world versus the apparent world. So the real world he referred to as the mind, and the apparent world as the physical world. The problem with this theory is that he referred to the mind as a physical thing. So he said the objects are either in the physical world or in the mind. So we know that we can only experience awareness or consciousness. We cannot experience the mind. And also the mind is not physical. So by his theory, if an object is in the real world, it cannot be in the apparent world. And if the object is in the apparent world, we are not aware of it. And we know that we are aware of the objects that are around us. So we have John Locke, who was a pioneer in empiricism. He defined knowledge as a reflection on our senses, which is experience. He said that no knowledge outside of sense experience exists. He says that we experience properties of our environment, and he defined substance as that which has properties. So the problem with his theory is that he thought that properties come from the physical world. The problem with this is that we cannot know that. Because we don't have an objective view of the physical world. We only know what we experience, which is subjective. So we cannot know where these properties come from. He also divided reality into primary qualities and secondary qualities. Primary qualities is the objective reality, which is mass, number, extension, and shape. However, in our experience, mass is relative to acceleration. So if you're taking an elevator, you're going up, you feel heavier. If you're going down, you feel lighter. So which means that these primary qualities that he thought they're objective are actually subjective. So that's a flaw in his theory. In terms of secondary qualities, he called them subjective illusions. He didn't really believe that color, sound, smell, and taste exist in the real world. He says color is just the frequency of light, frequency of photons, and intensity. When these frequencies hit our eye, they manifest as color in our mind. Also with sound. So sound waves travel through a medium, they hit our ear, they get interpreted, and they manifest as sound in our mind. So if there is no ear to interpret the sound, there is no sound. So the real world really manifests the sound of silence, everybody knows that phrase, and a one-hand clap. So the same is with smell and taste. If you blindfolded a person and you put an apple under their nose and you feed them pear, they will think they're eating an apple. Just because smell is much stronger than taste, So this is also a subjective illusion. So finally we have David Hume. He was also a British empiricist. He said that we do not experience reality, but we experience appearances instead. He said that appearances are ultimately subjective. So he uses an example of a train. So in this example, there's a person at station A, a person at station B, and a person on the train that's going from station A to station B. So the person at station A is looking at as the train is leaving, the train is becoming smaller. For the person that's on the train is the same size the whole time. The person that's on station B, as the train is approaching, the train is getting bigger and bigger. So in reality, the train is staying the same, but to us it appears that it's becoming bigger and smaller, which is obviously subjective. So he divided reality into subjective reality, which is always interrupted, changing, and different. The objective reality is the definition of the real world, which is uninterrupted, relatively unchanging, and the same. We found that midline between these two is experience, which represents similarity, continuity, and unity. He also hypothesized that the real world is causing our experience that creates appearances in our mind. There's a flaw in this theory because correlation does not imply causation. So even if the real world is causing these appearances, we cannot have an objective view, so we don't know. So we can't assume that the real world is actually causing our experience. And these are the conclusions I came up with. So we cannot know if there is a real world because we don't have an objective view. We can only know what we experience. What we experience are subjective illusions of objects that are in the real world. Appearances are constantly changing, thus they're subjective illusions. And if there is a real world, it cannot by definition be as it appears to us. Thank you.